You pick up your phone to check one notification. 30 seconds later, you are still scrolling. You don't remember deciding to keep going. Your thumb just kept moving. You tell yourself you'll stop after this next post. You don't. Most people blame willpower. They say the apps are designed to be addictive, and they're right, but that's not the real answer. The real answer is far stranger. The real answer is that your brain was built for this exact behavior 50,000 years before the first phone existed. To understand why, you have to go back to a forest. Not a metaphorical one, an actual forest, somewhere in Pleistocene Africa, where one of your ancestors is searching for food. She doesn't know where the food is. She has no map, no schedule, no guarantee. She checks one bush, nothing. She checks another, a few berries. She checks a third, nothing again. Here's the part that matters. She doesn't stop checking. She keeps moving, keeps searching, because somewhere in that uncertainty is the next reward. And the not knowing is exactly what keeps her moving. This is called foraging behavior, and it is one of the oldest survival strategies your species ever developed. Researchers who study optimal foraging theory, building on framework first proposed by ecologist Eric Charnov, have shown that animals, including humans, evolved decision rules for exactly this kind of search. You don't search efficiently when rewards are predictable. You search efficiently when rewards are random. Predictable food sources get checked on a schedule and then ignored. Unpredictable ones get checked constantly, almost obsessively, because the brain can never be sure when the next one will pay off. Why would evolution build a brain that obsesses over uncertainty instead of one that calmly waits for sure things? Because for nearly all of human history, sure things didn't exist. Food was patchy. Threats were hidden. Information was scarce and valuable. A brain that got bored of uncertainty and walked away would starve. A brain that stayed engaged with the unknown, that kept checking just one more bush, just one more clearing, survived. That brain is the one you inherited. And here is where it gets uncomfortable. Because the same logic that kept your ancestor alive in the forest is the same logic that keeps you awake at midnight, lying in bed, telling yourself just 5 more minutes, while you scroll through posts from people you barely know. It's the same logic that makes you open the app while waiting in line for coffee, or while sitting on the toilet, or during a work meeting when you're supposed to be focused. You weren't planning to scroll. You just felt that small flicker of, maybe something interesting is happening right now. And you checked. Now here is where the science gets specific. In the 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz, working with monkeys, made a discovery that reshaped how we understand motivation. He found that dopamine neurons don't just fire when you get a reward. They fire even more strongly when the reward is uncertain. A guaranteed treat barely moves dopamine activity at all. A treat that might or might not arrive sends dopamine levels soaring, both in anticipation and in the moment of not knowing. Schultz called this a prediction error signal. Your brain, it turns out, is not built to reward you for winning. It's built to reward you for not knowing whether you'll win. Let that sit for a second. Does that sound familiar? It should, because that is precisely the mechanical heartbeat of your phone. You don't know if the next post will be boring or hilarious. You don't know if the next message will be from someone you love or a stranger. You don't know if your photo got 2 likes or 200. Every scroll is a forest. Every refresh is a bush that might be empty or might be full of berries. Your dopamine system cannot tell the difference between foraging for food on a savanna and foraging for content on a screen. As far as your ancient reward circuitry is concerned, they are the same task. Think about the last time you checked your phone and found nothing new. No messages, no likes, no alerts. There was a flicker of something not quite disappointment but close, a kind of hollow readiness. That feeling is your dopamine system recalibrating. It expected a reward, didn't get one, and immediately began preparing you to check again. Not because it was punishing you, because that is exactly what it was built to do. This connects to something psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered decades earlier with his famous variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it is also exactly what app designers have mastered. The people who built the apps you use every day knew this. They studied the same research. The pull to refresh gesture you do hundreds of times a day? It was deliberately modeled after a slot machine lever. That little loading animation when you drag the screen down? That's the engineered moment of uncertainty, the exact second your brain releases the most dopamine. The red notification dots? They were designed to create artificial urgency. Infinite scroll? It removes the natural stopping point that existed in the forest. These are not accidents. They are deliberate choices, tested and refined in A/B experiments on millions of users, all to keep that ancient foraging circuit firing. The engineers didn't just make the apps convenient. They made them into an endless forest where the bushes never run out. Your ancestors built this circuitry to find berries. App designers studied it to build infinite feeds. The mechanism is identical. Only the bush has changed. Here's the counterintuitive twist, though, the part that flips the whole story. You might assume that if uncertainty drives the craving, then certainty would relieve it. Get the good post, see the good message, and the itch should go quiet. But research from neuroscientist Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan draws a sharp line between two systems your brain treats as separate: wanting and liking. Wanting is driven by dopamine and uncertainty. Liking is driven by a different, much smaller set of chemical systems involving opioids in the brain. The unsettling discovery is that these two systems can move in completely opposite directions. You can want something intensely while barely liking it at all once you have it. Berridge demonstrated this by manipulating dopamine levels in animal subjects. Animals with suppressed dopamine stopped seeking food entirely, even when the food was placed right in front of them. But when researchers directly delivered the food into their mouths, the animals still showed pleasure responses. They could still like, they just couldn't want. The wanting and the liking were never the same thing. They never had been. This is why the scroll rarely feels satisfying even when it works. You weren't actually chasing the content. You were chasing the moment right before the content. The flicker of not knowing. The same flicker your ancestor felt walking up to an unfamiliar bush. The payoff was never really the point. The search was. And this is also why closing the app rarely gives you relief. The wanting system doesn't switch off when you put the phone down. It just redirects. You feel vaguely restless. You find yourself reaching for the phone again without deciding to. That restlessness isn't boredom. It's your dopamine system looking for an uncertain bush to check. So why does this matter now, today, for you specifically? Because for most of human history, foraging had a built-in limit. Forests ended, bushes ran out, daylight faded, and your ancestor had to stop searching and go home. The system that rewarded uncertainty was bolted onto a world that was, by necessity, finite. You cannot say the same thing about your phone. The forest never ends. There is no edge to the feed, no point where the bushes run out, no sunset that forces you to walk home. The same ancient circuitry that once kept a hungry person alive for one more hour of searching now keeps a comfortable, well-fed person searching for hours they never meant to spend. The numbers make this uncomfortable. Research published in the journal PLOS One found that the average person unlocks their phone over 80 times a day. Most of those unlocks are not in response to a notification. Most of them are unprompted. The person simply reached for the phone. The wanting system fired before the conscious mind had any say in the matter. You are not choosing to check. You are being pulled. It isn't that something is wrong with you. It's that something very old in you is working exactly the way it was designed to. The mismatch isn't in your brain. It's in the environment your brain now finds itself inside. And the people who built that environment knew this. Former engineers at major social platforms have openly admitted using variable reward systems. The pull to refresh gesture, the red notification dots, and infinite scroll were all deliberately designed to keep your ancient foraging circuitry constantly engaged. You are not pulling a slot machine handle, but your brain has no way of knowing that. Think about what that means the next time you find yourself 30 minutes deep into a feed you don't even remember opening. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are running 50,000-year-old foraging software in an environment specifically engineered to exploit it by people who studied exactly the same research you just heard and used it to make sure the bushes never run dry. Knowing this doesn't fix anything. Awareness is not a cure. Your dopamine system will not care that you understand it. The wanting will continue. The restlessness will continue. But there is something that shifts when you understand the machinery, something small but real. You stop blaming yourself for something that was never about willpower in the first place. And that, at minimum, is worth knowing. So you pick up your phone again later tonight to check one notification. And this time, maybe, you'll notice the moment right before you unlock the screen, the small flicker of not knowing what's waiting for you. Notice it the way you'd notice a berry bush in a forest. Notice that you are searching. Notice that the searching feels good. notice that the searching was never really about what you find. That flicker isn't new. It isn't a flaw. It isn't weakness dressed up as habit. It is 50,000 years of survival wired into 3 pounds of tissue sitting behind your eyes, doing exactly what it was designed to do. The oldest part of you is still out there in that forest, still checking. Still hoping the next bush will be different from the last one. Still unable to stop, because stopping, once, was the thing that got your ancestors killed. You inherited a brain built for a world that no longer exists. That's not a tragedy. It's just the most human thing there is.